Nightreign will be recycling assets, there's no denying it. Naturally, there will be a plenty of bosses from previous games appearing again. As much as I'm excited about all the new unique bosses we'll see, I can't help but wonder about all the returning bosses we will get to experience in a modern Souls game. A good fight alone doesn't make a great boss, you need a fitting arena, a beautiful soundtrack, and strong lore to turn a boss into a masterpiece. Dragon Slayer armor, for example, he's an underrated boss. Boss's moveset is a lot of fun and the encounter is well balanced from start to finish, but despite being a great fight, he's rarely mentioned alongside bosses like Ishin, Ludwig or Gale. That's because even with a flawless fight, he's just a regular boss in between two locations guarding a bridge. There's nothing much going on with him, and this is exactly why I don't want to see bosses like Gale in Nightreign. Without his arena and lore, Gale would lose all of its impact, he would just turn into a regular boss. Each game has a boss you would consider a masterpiece. As much as I would like to refight them, they shouldn't be a reused asset. So instead, let's talk about some great lesser bosses who should introduce themselves to all the new players who started their Souls journey with Elden Ring. At its core, Glass Knight's fight doesn't fit a PvE only game. After all, his mechanic is mostly a PvP focused gimmick. He traps players within his shield and unleashes them during the fight. It's a PvP oriented boss battle where you're fighting players just as much as you're fighting the boss himself. Of course, Glass Knight still has a lot of potential, but not in its current state. He doesn't really have a fancy moveset because Dark Souls 2 is being Dark Souls 2. He doesn't move around much and he doesn't really do a lot. He has a couple of melee attacks and occasionally he is launching some projectiles. So when you look at the fight, there isn't much going on with him. Encounter works within Dark Souls 2 just fine and it is a decent fight in its own game, but in a modern Souls title, Glass Knight would feel extremely dated. So what are his redeeming features? Well, first off, he's one of the coolest looking knights in all From Software games, but aside from that, what truly makes him worthy is the shield he is holding. Yes, it can deflect spells and all that, but the real highlight is how he can summon anyone as long as he defeats them in a fight. There's nothing stopping Glass Knight from summoning dozens of different enemy types from Elden Ring or Dark Souls. If From Software updates the moveset of all their bosses instead of just dropping them into Nightreign unchanged, Glass Knight could deliver an amazing fight with a lot of replayability. He just needs a heavy, devastating moveset, something like, I don't know, Godfrey or Dragon Slayer armor again. Now picture him summoning Crucible Knights, Banished Knights, and variety of PvP style NPCs with unique builds like the ones you encounter near Caelid Arena. He already has an incredible design and his core gimmick is perfect. The only thing that he needs, just like many other Dark Souls 2 bosses, is an updated moveset, and he could easily steal the spotlight. Gundyr isn't exactly underrated, but I don't know, he always feels underrated and underappreciated. His first encounter is the single best tutorial boss ever designed in the Souls genre, including like Souls-likes and all that. Despite being extremely easy, he still looks intimidating. But I'm not nominating him because of his tutorial fight obviously. His endgame variant, Champion Gundyr, is easily one of the best bosses in Dark Souls. He's a powerhouse, an absurdly strong knight who doesn't need to rely on flashy effects or power-ups. He fights like a true warrior, every single move is clean and fancy. You won't see any magic or strange gimmicks, just a skilled fighter using raw combat experience. His moveset is visually satisfying and it flows beautifully. His combos chain together so smoothly that when one ends, next one always feels like a natural continuation. And his second phase is pure cinema. He doesn't need a dramatic transition like Malenia becoming a goddess or Godfrey ripping off his shackles. In his second phase, Gundyr simply locks in. He gets angry. That's it. He becomes infinitely more aggressive and the opening between his attacks nearly disappear. I don't know about you, but personally I want to see more of this boss type where the enemy is just an incredibly skilled warrior with no magic, no divine assistance, just pure technique and aggression. So I just hope we get to fight Gundyr again in Nightreign. Not many Sekiro bosses would fit an Elden Ring style game. After all, the core of Sekiro's gameplay is its unique combat system. Without a deflection mechanic on par with Sekiro's, you can't really include incredible bosses like Genichiro, Owl or Ishin. Since we don't yet know how detailed the new combat in Nightreign will be, I will pick a boss who would not only fit perfectly into an Elden Ring type game but should absolutely be in it. That masterpiece of a boss is none other than the folding screen monkeys. Nah, player base is not ready for that yet, From Software has a habit of making their hardest bosses optional. Some of his attacks can be deflected, but they almost always result in a heavy stagger. Demon of Hatred is a fight that revolves around mobility, positioning, and precise dodging. Elden Ring would have been too slow for him, but Nightreign is the perfect title for his return. He doesn't necessarily need all 3 phases in Nightreign, but his fluid moveset makes such a long fight entertaining from start to finish. Probably his only real downside is how often he moves across the arena from one end to the other, like Elden Beast. But aside from that, his combos are well telegraphed and fun to play against. Demon of Hatred is basically Manus on steroids, and he might be the greatest monster type boss From Software has ever made. I see no reason why he shouldn't make a comeback in Nightreign. Boss pattern in Dark Souls is simple. You fight heroes past their prime, sometimes weak villains are trying to take advantage of the chaos, and occasionally you challenge truly powerful monsters for the fun of it. Somehow, Sister Frieda manages to represent all of them at once. Story-wise, she is just like you, another Ashen one who failed to save the world and was burned by the flames. Just like you, she was brought back to life against her will to save the world. She is already an interesting boss because by lore she is your equal. After sacrificing herself, she didn't want to do it again. Instead, she traveled to a painted world and she became a fascist, I think, I don't know. But I especially love when the game puts you up against just another nobody and says, here, you two are equal in every way, now fight until only one of you is left standing. Sister Frieda is easily one of the greatest Souls bosses ever created. She has 3 phases, but the fight never feels drawn out. Similar to Genichiro, the first phase acts as a tutorial to introduce the moveset. She isn't too powerful here, and she doesn't extend her combos much. She uses weaker versions of the attacks that will reappear later. She turns invisible, but the sound design and the furniture scattered across the arena let you track her even when she completely vanishes. Second phase may not be on par with Demon Prince, but it is still one of the best duo fights in the franchise. There are 2 bosses, but they don't overwhelm you by attacking separately. Despite being a duo fight, this phase usually serves as a transitional stage to prepare you for what's coming next. You can also make this phase easier or harder by choosing which target to prioritize. After all the build-up and warm-up phases, you finally experience the climax of the battle. Frieda unleashes her true power and her moveset changes drastically. From start to finish, third phase is difficult but fair while also delivering a visually and cinematically stunning experience. To this day, Frieda remains as the best dex-lady type boss fight. When I think Melania, Maria, and Rilana, and even all the other excellent encounters, I think none of them quite reach the level of Frieda's final phase, so she definitely needs a spot in Nightreign. Here's one of the best bosses in Souls genre. Up until you meet Pontiff Sullivan, Dark Souls 3 is quite chill. Ward is really easy, then there's an optional tree, and then there's a sorcerer that basically does nothing, it's super simple. Beast Watchers are okay, but then it is followed by Volnir, which is an absurdly easy boss. You got the point. Early Dark Souls 3 bosses offer little to no difficulty. Despite being visually stunning encounters, they are usually just too simple. But everything changes the moment you meet Sullivan. He serves as the gate between the early game and the rest of the adventure. Sullivan is such a well-crafted boss that you could drop him into Nightreign with absolutely no changes and he would fit right in. In fact, if you look closely, even Promise Consort Radahn replicates one of his combos. Sullivan is a modern Souls boss done right. He already has a solid variety in his moveset. Some of his combos feel like they will never end, but his aggression is tuned just well enough that you don't feel like you're spamming dodges the entire time. Being able to parry him is also a massive bonus. I always loved the risk-reward factor in these aggressive boss fights. Not to mention he can create an illusion of himself to aid in the fight. Normally fighting 2 copies of the same boss is frustrating. Gargoyle Duo in Elden Ring, for example, was anything but fun before the adjustments. Not because it was difficult, but because it wasn't enjoyable at all. Sullivan's duo phase, though, is perfectly telegraphed. The logic behind it is simple. Illusion attacks you first to protect the main boss, and then Sullivan follows up with the exact same move. Anytime Illusion starts a combo, Sullivan starts repeating it shortly after. Overall, Sullivan is an entertaining boss who manages to stay fair and balanced while offering a solid challenge. Personally, I believe every new player needs to experience this masterpiece of a boss fight in Nightreign. Here's the thing, I don't think even a single Bloodborne boss will appear in Nightreign for the obvious reason that From Software doesn't own the IP, but if I don't mention this game at least once every video, Bloodborne fans start losing their mind, like where's Bloodborne, where's Bloodborne, I don't know, I guess I didn't want to include it. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. There are a lot of great bosses in Bloodborne, but I don't see most of them fitting into an Elden Ring style setting. I literally can't picture Lady Maria, Ludwig, or that one nurse with a crying baby in the background working in a world like Elden Ring. But if I had to go with one boss, I would choose everybody's favorite infant, Orphan of course. There's not much to say about him. Decent difficulty, fun moveset, solid phase transition, and the satisfying difficulty spike. Screams are a bit too much though. Overall, it is a really good fight that would fit Elden Ring better than most of the other Bloodborne bosses. So if I have to go with something from Bloodborne, yeah, let's go with Orphan of course, but I really don't think any boss or anything from Bloodborne will be present in Nightreign. Real talk, who deserves a spot in Nightreign more than Strollin? A lot of other bosses probably, but anyways, okay. He's the most unfortunate victim of Dark Souls 2's game design. Strollin's fight goes back to the days when From Software was milking playtime with long and annoying runbacks. Naturally, as an optional boss with an insufferable runback, Strollin doesn't get much attention. Despite being one of the best bosses in Dark Souls 2, right up there with Fume Knight and Ivory King, he isn't all that popular even among the weebs. His mobility mostly boils down to jumping around and dashing back in, but there's more going on beneath the surface. He mixes some projectiles and some different melee attacks during his charges, so there's a bit of variety there. His main melee combo is not anything groundbreaking though. It is just a simple 3 or 4 hit chain, but hey, it works. He obviously cannot compete with the modern Souls bosses in his current state, but this is exactly the point. His design is already interesting, he looks cool, he has a great weapon, and with a modern moveset he could easily steal the show. He definitely deserves a second chance, but this time in a game where a terrible boss run wouldn't ruin the experience for the entire player base. When designing bosses for Nightreign or picking them from earlier games, you need to choose bosses who will fit the 3-player encounters. After all, this will be a more co-op centered game than all the others. Considering this aspect, Dancer of the Boreal Valley is one of the best bosses in Dark Souls. Her moveset mostly covers wide areas, which makes her dangerous even when you flank her. But of course, this is not the only reason why she is a great option. As a boss fight, her entire encounter is insanely well telegraphed and fair. Sure, her grab attacks will occasionally bypass the hitboxes, but she works well as both an early game and a late game boss without needing any stat adjustment. Overall, she is incredibly well balanced, her moveset is almost perfect, and her design, especially her sound design, is great. She is exactly the kind of boss who would fit Nightreign without needing the slightest change to the overall design. What is cooler than an angel of death wandering deep within the abyss and hunting down horrors beyond comprehension? Dark Lurker is probably one of the most interesting and unique bosses in Dark Souls trilogy. There's so little known about him that even his soul description says, yeah, he's something, but we have no idea what. His design and moveset promises a lot. But of course, Dark Souls 2's gameplay doesn't help the fight. Dark Lurker is a caster type boss done right. He has a decent variety of spells and he can open portals around the arena to alter the trajectory of his projectiles. Just imagine the potential of this move in a modern Souls game. He could create portals, attack from multiple directions, and use portal to swap between range and melee combos. Dark Souls 2 is overall a slower game. Bosses don't have high or even moderate mobility, so they don't move around much, but imagine Dark Lurker constantly shifting positions, unleashing different combos like Malekith. There's just so much potential in his moveset, and if I'm being honest, it is just wasted in Dark Souls 2. During the boss fight, he even splits into 2 bodies. Despite simply multiplying the number of the bosses without adding any unique moveset, Dark Lurker Duo still plays better than the majority of the Elden Ring Duo fights. Possibly the biggest advantage of Dark Lurker is his flexible background. He has no past, no history, no lore, so he can easily fit into a brand new game without any additional lore or explanation. I know most of the world building in Dark Souls 2 didn't carry over to Dark Souls 3, but Dark Lurker has too much potential to be forgotten after a single minor appearance in one game. Prince Lothric is not a true duo boss, but the combination of a caster and a melee fighter is done perfectly here. Especially in the second phase, I don't really know why, but Lorien has one of the most satisfying melee combos. His attacks are fast, he attacks often enough, and the moves look amazing. And the fact that he teleports around you all the time with his brother's help makes the fight engaging and interesting. Fight is not overly complicated and avoiding hits is not difficult at all. It's just an entertaining fight from start to finish. Second phase is where fight gets a bit spicier. Lothric joins the party once you defeat Lorien. Now there's a bit more magic involved, but nothing crazy like the second phase of Promised Consort Radahn. There are some occasional projectiles, but mostly it is the same fight with slightly more teleporting this time. To end the fight, you have to defeat Lothric rather than his brother, which adds a nice little complexity to the encounter. Overall, Lothric is quite fun. There isn't a lot happening during the fight, but existing moveset feels great. Sadly, it is not as difficult as the other endgame bosses, but Lothric's mobility mixed with melee and range combos work just right. I'm pretty sure a mobile boss like this with slightly higher difficulty would make an amazing challenge for a team of players. So, why not? They are already a great boss and I wouldn't mind fighting them again in Nightreign. That being said, this was all for today. I will see you on the next one. Like, subscribe, or not. Anyways, bye.